What's up, everybody? Let's Talk Jets Radio. If you're out driving in this rain, stay safe. Crazy storms, crazy weather out here right now. Actually waited until I got back to my apartment to do this video. But a quick video here, just looking ahead to the offseason, trying to embrace some positivity around our 2024 undefeated New York Jets. And as much as I kind of laugh and joke about, when Joe Douglas talks about the team being close away and, how they need to reflect and, fix all the mistakes and not make the same mistake twice, there's a part of me that does hear all this and actually tries to convince myself that, he's not exactly wrong. And, when you try to figure out, who deserves more blame for the way the season turned out, is it Joe Douglas or is it Saleh? You can make a very good argument that Joe Douglas deserves more blame, but that long-term, potentially, Robert Saleh is the bigger issue. I think there's a clear issue with this coaching staff. I think that in a lot of ways, without a quarterback, they absolutely got exposed this year. So you look ahead to this offseason, and you look at the roster and where they're at, and just from a player perspective, not looking at coaching, not looking at anything else, you can make a very good argument that the Jets have a young nucleus that, if they were coached right and they had a quarterback, would probably be a playoff team each of the last 2 years. And our outlook, I think, would completely change. So I'm going into this offseason a little bit more optimistic. Obviously, I know the coach is not getting fired, nor is he probably going to make any serious changes to the offensive staff. But you heard Garrett Wilson today on Bart and Hahn talking about how Aaron Rodgers is the offense. He unlocks so many possibilities, and the things that you could do with him under center versus Zach and Boyle or Simeon or whoever else you trotted out there, it's completely different. The offense was built around Aaron Rodgers for Aaron Rodgers, and I do think the Jets have a 2-year window here. I'm gonna keep saying it. I think Rodgers wants to play 2 years. He's motivated. He's got a chip on his shoulder, and he wants to go out there and prove that he could still do this. So I think the Jets have a 2-year window. And when I hear people talking about rebuilding and tearing it all down, I'm like, why? We've gone through how many rebuilds over the last 13 years of not making the playoffs. I cannot, and I said this the other night, I can't wrap my head around the possibility of tearing it all down and starting all over again, and putting faith in Woody Johnson to make the right decisions, hiring a GM and that guy finding a head coach. Now, is the unknown better than the known? I don't really know. Douglas has some good under his watch, and he's got a lot of bad. And unfortunately, the bad are at places that you can't screw up. The quarterback position, the offensive line, receiver, as far as every other pick and signing other than Garrett Wilson pretty much, and even the head coach. So I don't think all is lost, but I think if anything, 2023 exposed that without a quarterback, this coaching staff seriously got exposed in all phases. You could say the defense played well. They weren't tested a whole lot. They still blew that 20-point lead to Washington. I don't know what this team is or what their identity is, but I do think that with 3 moves, our outlook could completely change. And so the first move is the obvious one, all the whispers today with, Davante Adams, liking stuff on Twitter related to the Jets, or the picture with Garrett Wilson changing his number. And I think this move just makes too much sense for so many reasons. Obviously, he knows the offense. He knows the quarterback. You need another receiver opposite Garrett Wilson, a legitimate playmaker. And, aside from the obvious connections, you're a win-now team. And getting Aaron Rodgers solidified that. You're not looking for the future. You're not saving assets. You're not, building for the draft for the future. You're trying to win right now. So if it's possible for a rebuilding Raiders team also to get back draft picks for the future, it makes way too much sense. And I think it's very possible that, the Raiders, they know their window is, at least 2 years away. So future draft picks for Davante Adams, to me, is the first move. Whether it's, hopefully you can get him for, something other than a first. If it took a first-round pick, honestly, I would probably do it, a 2025 first-round pick. You figure if Rodgers is healthy this year, this is going to be a pretty good team. This is going to at least be a playoff team. So a pick that's somewhere in the 20s for Davante Adams, to me, that's absolutely fair value. Now, do I think it's going to take that? Possibly not. Hopefully not. I think Davante Adams obviously has a say in this. Star players, it seems like they can control a little bit more so nowadays where they go. So as long as he wants to play with the Jets and he wants to play with Aaron Rodgers, which I think he does, I don't see why he wouldn't. He had the best years of his career with Rodgers. As long as this is where he wants to play and he makes it known to other teams, like, I don't want to be there, I think the Jets gain some leverage, and I think they can make it happen. So as long as you're talking about future picks, hard to deal from picks this year when you already lost a second rounder for Rodgers. But if you're talking about future draft compensation to get a player like Davante Adams in here, on a win-now team, you absolutely do that. So that's the first move. The second move will probably surprise some people, because if you get your receiver in free agency, almost everybody, at least as far as their early mock drafts that are coming out, all have the Jets going offensive line at pick 10. I think it makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't be upset if they did that. But I also think you have to see how the rest of free agency plays out. And for me, at pick 10, if Brock Bowers is there, I don't know how you turn that up. Arguably the best tight end in college football history. I mean, the way that this kid has played for Georgia over the past couple of years, to get a tight end like that, a true number one. And Conklin's good. I think Ruckert has a ceiling as well. I don't think he's reached his full potential yet. But Brock Bowers he will be a legitimate starter from day one, but probably within 2 years, probably a top 5 tight end in this league. And you look at the impact that Kelsey's had on Mahomes, Kittle for Brock Purdy, even Josh Allen with Dawson Knox and Kincaid. A valuable tight end is so important, and Conklin, he's only going to have 1 year left on his contract. For 1 year, it'd be great to have 2 tight end sets with Bowers and Conklin both out there, with Rucker as your third guy. So to me, that just it solves 2 issues. You need a playmaker, you need help blocking. He does both. So to get that stud tight end that we've been searching for, along with obviously offensive line and quarterback and a number of other spots, we seriously haven't had a true tight end in a very long time. So if they can solidify that at pick 10, and you're talking about a skill position group of, let's just say, for week 1, you got 2 tight ends, 2 receivers, Breece Hall in the backfield, you got Bowers, Conklin, Davante Adams, Garrett Wilson. I'm not saying the offensive line's still not important, but with those kind of weapons, you can make a lot of things happen. And so the third move, one that I don't want to happen, but I think it's all but inevitable. You listen to the way that Bryce Huff is talking. He wants an opportunity to show what he can do in a full-time role. And I think just with the Jets already knowing that McDonald's going to have an expanded role for next year, it's hard to see Bryce Huff wanting to stay here. But I do think the Jets tag him, they look to trade him, and ultimately try to get something back for the Aaron Rodgers trade and all the draft compensation that they lost there. So I think those are going to be your big 3 moves. And ultimately, whatever you get from trading Bryce Huff, whether it's a second-round pick, third-round pick, you typically don't see player-for-player swaps anymore. But whatever it is, it's going to be something to help the offensive line. I think you probably double up on the offensive line, whatever pick you get, from that trade, along with your pick in round 3. And then obviously free agency, whatever available money that you have, from not signing Huff and around the Davante Adams contract, you invest in the offensive line. And I think this offseason's a lot different from a lot of past offseasons. There's no Trent Williams out there, there's no Conklin out there, there's no Joe Tooney. I don't think there's one guy that you're signing that's going to fix this offensive line. So first, you got to figure out, where's AVT playing? Is he your tackle of the future, or is he going to be your guard of the future? And then once you know that, if he's your guard, you need 2 starting tackles. So that's a problem. If he's ultimately going to make the switch to tackle, I think that solves a lot of issues, gives you a little bit more flexibility. Maybe you keep Tomlinson. If there's an upgrade that's possible with, the $10 million or whatever it is that you can save from cutting him, you invest that in somebody else. You could still bring back McGovern. You would have Max Mitchell and Carter Warren as depth at tackle. You could also bring back Becton as well. You wouldn't need him necessarily to start unless he's healthy and he looks better than he did this year in training camp. So there would be a lot more flexibility, a lot more options, I think, if AVT does play tackle. But it ultimately comes down to where he's most comfortable and where he feels that he can play a full 17 games. So that's the first thing they got to figure out before they can do anything with the O-line. Once they know where he's going to be, then you start attacking, you start making moves, you invest whatever resources you possibly have into finding legitimate bodies that can be healthy, that can play, that'll know the system, where you're not going to have any excuses why they're not ready to go week 1. So hope you guys enjoyed. Talk to you later.